We're going to be discussing mental strength a lot today, I'd imagine. But before we do, can you give me a brief definition of mental strength? Like when we refer to somebody as mentally strong, what does that actually mean?
Ooh, good question and good place to start. So there's three parts to it. It's about the way you think, the way you feel, and the way that you behave.
Hmm.
So the thinking part is knowing that everything you think isn't necessarily true, that your brain underestimates you at times and it will tell you that you can't do the things that you can. So part of it is about being able to speak back to those thoughts rationally. And then the feeling part is knowing that you can allow yourself to feel a wide range of emotions, but that you're in control. You don't have to stay stuck in a place that you don't want to stay stuck, and you can manage your emotions. And then the behavioral part is about knowing that you can take positive action. No matter what challenge you're faced in life, there's always something you can do, and you can push yourself to do something to make your life or somebody else's life or the world a little bit better. So when we talk about mental strength, a lot of people think it's about mental toughness. Like there's no pain and you never quit and you have to push yourself to do everything all the time. And I think that's when people are acting tough, when they want to pretend that they don't have feelings, or when they want to say, I don't ever need any help, I'm completely independent. But that's really about your ego and protecting your ego so that you look like you're functioning well on the surface. Mental strength is different. It's about knowing, of course, I need to ask for help, or it's okay to quit sometimes. If I set a goal and it's not in line with my values, I don't have to keep going just because I'm afraid of what people are going to think.
I have a background of competitive fitness and I have a mentality. I don't know where it's come from. It's really had to focus on it the past 2 years where I'm all or nothing. I either win or I lose. I eat the whole pack of Oreos or I eat none of the Oreos. I really have struggled with that in my past. And I've done a lot of hard things. I've trained a lot. I've done a lot of things like that. And people always like, they'll talk to me and they'll refer to me and they'll be like, oh, you must be like really mentally tough. Like you, and I've always thought to myself, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I feel so mentally weak because almost every single thing that I would go into, if I didn't win, it was a failure. If I didn't go my absolute hardest, like I would do really good in a race. And then I'd be like, oh, but there was that 1 second where I backed off a little, where I hurt too much. And I would always think of myself as like mentally weak. And it wasn't until like the past 2 years where I was just burned out. I couldn't hang anymore. Like 25, 26 years of that, I was like, okay, I'm done. And I walked out from the gym. I didn't do anything for like a year and a half. And it wasn't until then that I had that setback that I've really been like, okay, this mentality has really held me back. Like it's really set me up for failure because I can't sustain it. I'll come out and I'll just keep grinding and I'll keep grinding it. And then eventually it's just like, I can't maintain that. And I've really been kind of on the quest for the past almost a year where I've like been trying to change that mentality and really refocus on the definition of mental toughness and mental strength. And I like how you touched on that initially, the difference between the two.
And you're absolutely right, and you're not alone in that. And I'm very similar. I think if I'm going to do something, I'm like all in. And I agree. So many people think, well, that clearly means that you have this toughness and you're going to get through life just fine. But the truth is, so many times in life, we need to quit. We need to back off. We need to be like, okay, I started this business. It's a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing I could do is wait 2 more years to quit. If you're on the wrong bus, the best time to get off is the next stop. You don't just keep hanging in there thinking if I'm strong enough, I'll fix this. Or if you sprain your ankle 2 miles into the race, you don't need to finish it. Like who are you proving anything to? But I've been that person many times in my life. And it's, has to do with like self-worth issues, thinking I'm only as good as my achievements, or if I quit or walk away, it says something about who I am as a person, that somehow I'm not good enough. I'm not able to do the things I set out to do. I'm a loser, all of those things. But in reality, it's about trying things and knowing that you aren't going to be the best and that you can learn. And it brings out concepts like growth mindset, like you can
Mm-hmm.
learn to do better, but also about self-compassion and knowing if your friends sprain their ankle 2 miles in, you wouldn't be like, you still need to finish the race. But when we do that stuff to ourselves, we're saying like, I'm not good enough. I have to keep going no matter what. So I do think that's a process. And for a lot of people, it's that shift of knowing, all right, you don't have to grind 24/7 to be a worthwhile person. You can give up sometimes. You can walk
Mm-hmm.
away. You can do things in moderation. And that's a tough mindset shift for people who are really driven.
Is there, because obviously there's going to be the flip side of that, too much compassion, like too much, like how do you know when it's like, okay, I should, like, this is too far versus like I'm actually just being weak, like I could actually do this and it would benefit me to do this.
Yeah, because I do see it on both ends. So let's say somebody would come into my therapy office and be like, I took care of myself this week. I was too tired, so I didn't go to the gym at all. And you're like, well, there is that healthy balance of like, what's a reasonable amount to do? And then when you are tempted to not do something, like maybe you want to give up on a goal or you just want to take a day off, I think it's important to evaluate like what's going on
Mm-hmm.
and what's my emotional state. Am I just kind of sad today? Am I a little anxious? Did I not sleep very well last night? What's the pros and cons of doing it? And just walking through that. And again, it might be if my friend said to me, hey, I haven't gone to the gym all week because I'm taking really good care of myself. Would you be like, yeah? Or hopefully, if you're a good friend, you'd say, okay, and now what? Like, how are you going to push yourself to go to the gym next week? And you'd have a much more realistic conversation. So just asking yourself, what would I say to a trusted friend? Again, hopefully, if it's a good friend, it's somebody you'd be honest with. But when we take the emotion out of it, our own sadness or our own anxiety, we usually see things much more clearly because we
Mm-hmm.
think better when we're being logical, not just emotional. And that helps us to figure that out. Like, what's the balanced view of this?
I think that filter's great. While you were saying that, like, what would you say to a friend? Because you can take the self-importance, the I out of it, and kind of emphasize the compassion. Because like I have great friends, and I would tell them honest that like if they're
Right.
sitting on the couch, you'd be like, hey man, this isn't self-care anymore. This is like you're just trying to avoid something versus like they're coming in with a cast. I'm like, hey bro, it's like chill. Like you don't get bonus points for being here.
Right, right. And, and I've had friends on both ends of the spectrum, and I've been on both ends of the spectrum, but I had a friend that was running and she had injured her knee. And she's like out there limping all day, every day, still trying to run because she thought if I can't run, then, catastrophe is going to happen. I'm going to be so out of shape and I'll never get back into running. Well, she really needed knee surgery,
Mm.
but she needed somebody else to say to her, like, hey, back off on that. Let's figure out what's going on with you. And then you can move forward. But sometimes we need that outside voice too. So hopefully we have people in our lives when we don't see it that they'll be kind enough to point those things out to us too.
At what point in your life did you start applying this mentality? And then how long did it take for it to be like, that's your go-to versus like having to remember and reapply it?
So I was 21 when I first became a therapist.
Okay.
And coming out of college, I was like, all right, I know all this stuff out of my textbook, but and hoped I was helping people, but I wasn't really sure. But my mom passed away suddenly. She had a brain aneurysm that ruptured. She was only 51. And losing her made me realize, okay, a lot of these tools and principles and skills I'm teaching people, yeah, they're okay for when life is going well, but they're really not helpful when life feels like it's falling apart. And that really drove me to start studying about mental strength. And that helped me shift my definition from what I thought mental strength was to really realizing it's not about acting tough or pretending like you have it all together. And then when I was 26, it was 3 years to the day from when my mom died, my 26-year-old husband died. And I became a widow. I didn't have my mom, and I had to go to work because I had to pay the bills. It was just me at that point. And during that time in my life, again, I just had to dig deep, study, figure out how do you be mentally strong when it feels like you've lost everything and life is absolutely falling apart. And over the years, I've just studied it more and learned about it more. And then, of course, I wrote an article called 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do. Uh, Over 10 years ago now, it went viral. 50 million people read it. And that's what led my career to shift so that I started writing books. So now I've spent the last decade speaking, writing, researching, talking about it everywhere. But I'll say it still doesn't always come natural. There's still so many things I do, and I just have to remind myself all the time of, okay, take a step back. Like you don't have to be the best at everything you do, and it's okay to still be learning. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to struggle with things, and it's okay to tell other people when you're struggling. But every day I still hear the opposite message in the world. And I still have to remind myself because people will say all these things about, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not true. Or people are like, check on your strong friends. No, your strong friends are the ones who are talking to you already. And there's so many myths, I think, about what mental strength is. And even though I spend so much time talking about it, even to this day, I'll catch it in my own life where I'm like, no, that's not quite what we're doing here. And to refocus my strategies every day. And I still catch myself doing the things that I wrote about what not to do in my books. But hopefully I'm a work in progress. I'm growing stronger and getting better too.
That's another thing I've had to focus on, like with the mentality of all or nothing. It's so hard to kind of bring that character shift, like, oh, I failed changing this, or I failed doing this, personality trait that I want to change. It's like, am I ever going to change? Is it ever worth it? Instead of like that constant refocus and reapplication.
Absolutely, and on a daily basis. So I like to run, and I don't like to run far, but I like to run fast. And so almost every day I run a mile as fast as I can just to see if I can get to 6 minutes. And I'm not quite there, but sometimes I get close.
That sounds
But
like my
like,
nightmare.
luckily for me, since I was a little kid, I used to run around the house and make my mom time me. So then as an adult, suddenly I was like timing myself for a mile, and it took a minute to be like, this is what I like to do when I was
Yeah.
4. Here I am doing it now at 40. But and I'll have those days where things aren't going well, and I'm like, oh man, I'm getting slower, I'm getting old, I'm getting out of shape, and no, it's just a bad day. It's all good. And then on the flip side, I have other days where I'm out like running as fast as I can, and I'll see somebody on a bicycle, and I think it's funny to like run faster than somebody on a bicycle. I live in the Florida Keys, so people aren't on like mountain bikes; they're
Mhm.
on like beach cruisers, so they're not going that fast. I'm like trying to outrun a biker for like no real reason other than I think it's fun. But like, that's like, why am I doing these certain things in life? But always just checking in with my mentality, like, why is this certain thing important to me? Does it line up with my values of what's really important in life? Because the truth is, taking care of my health is a value. I really want to make sure that when I'm 95 years old, if I get to be
Mhm.
fortunate enough to live that long, that I'm still in good enough shape to get around. I want to focus on quality of life. So again, it's not about whether I actually beat the 6 minute mile mark. It's more about, am I taking care of myself on a daily basis? And I have to go back to that. What's really important in life?
Absolutely. I recently did my 2025 end of year review, and I'm not original, so nobody think I am. Chris Williamson from the Modern Wisdom podcast had like a review, so I just downloaded that and did that. But one of those was like, when you're 85, when you're 90, like what will you have wished you did more to like make yourself
Mm.
happy down there? And definitely one of those things was like physical health. I want to be able to function and move, and I want to be able to do it to the best of the possible ability. And then I was like, I want to make sure I've had like deep and meaningful conversations with my dad and my mom, because they won't be there. So I want to have those. Um, and that, like, I've never done a year end review, and it was really cool to like, I spent like 3 hours doing that, and it really refocuses on like kind of what's important and what to like reapply during your day. And it shifts a lot of importance that we put onto small, dumb things that don't really matter. It's pretty amazing.
I love that. And I had encouraged a lot of the people I'm working with too to do the exact same thing, because so often we put energy into like planning a vacation or
Mhm.
planning, people were planning their wedding for 2 years. But like, how often do we really plan our lives and design the kind of life that we want to live to make sure that it's in accordance with our values? And as you say, sometimes we lose sight of it and you get sidetracked. You start worrying about X, Y, and Z, and you think, is that really that important? And it often isn't. But things like having those meaningful conversations with your parents, it's really easy to put that off until tomorrow,
Mhm.
next week, next month. But when we really realize how important that stuff is, we become much more driven to say, I'm going to make this a priority and I'm going to do it today.
Absolutely. And not to get too far off topic, there's this book. It was called like The Five Types of Wealth. It came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty good. But in there, like one of the first couple pages, he talks about like how often you're actually going to see your parents,
Hmm.
and he talks about like, most people see them like 2 times a year for holidays, and then you just multiply that by the average year time. It's like, okay, I only got like 36 times left with my parents, not 30 years, and it's so crazy to think about.
It's wild, right? And then when you put that into perspective of like, well, how do I want to make sure? Because otherwise it's easy to be like, oh, I'm not going to go home for the holidays this year, or a week goes by and you don't call somebody.
Mhm.
And time gets away from you if you aren't careful about being really intentional about how you spend it.
Absolutely. Well, I'm 28. My wife is 25. We've been married 2 years. You had your spouse die when you were 26, and I couldn't imagine, like, brutal, like that would bury me. And then one of your first thing on 13 things mentally strong people don't do was they don't waste time feeling sorry for themselves. I don't know if I'd have the I don't know, whatever you want to call it, the self-reflection, the ability to look at it without the emotion, just the rationale to say that, especially put that first. Like how did you able to achieve that in such a crazy and hard time?
Well, fortunately for me, I was a therapist. So at
Yeah.
least I knew about grief. I knew about loss. And I would see people that would come into my office and like something happened to them. And maybe it was an injustice 10 years ago or something tragic happened 30 years ago. And I would see some people who just never really got past it, where they were like, nope, my life was horrible. It was awful. Maybe as a kid, I was teased and bullied. So therefore, I don't have to take any action now. And they were really just looking for some justification. Like, I don't have to do anything to make my life better because I went through this. Or they felt like the world sort of owed them something like, I went through all this, so now I deserve good things to happen. I'm going to sit back and wait for it to. And I saw what that did to people. Like they became resentful, they became bitter. And these are the angry people when you have the grouchy neighbor who's always complaining about stuff.
Hmm.
These are the people that are really feeling sorry for themselves. And I didn't want to be that person. And I can remember after my husband died, I heard a story about somebody else and she had just lost her fiance and she couldn't afford to keep the apartment. And so within a couple of weeks, she had to move. And just the thought of like, I don't want to move. I'd already lost so much. So then to lose my house and to have to pack up everything. And the thought of that seemed overwhelming, but it kind of also put things in perspective. I was like, okay, well, I'm a therapist. I work 40 hours. You can't work 80 hours as a therapist, but I can do something. I'm going to take some kind of an action so I don't become homeless or have to I could have moved in with my dad. But I thought, I just want to keep my house. So that's when I started freelance writing. And it was really about taking action that would help me say, okay, I can sit on the couch and say, this is horrible and awful. And while I needed to grieve and I needed to let myself feel sad, there's a difference. It's when we start to be like, oh, my life is so bad and there's nothing I can do. And we exaggerate how bad everything is and we underestimate our capabilities. That's when we get stuck. And to be honest, that's why I wrote the letter in the first place. It was really just a letter to myself. But my father-in-law had been diagnosed with terminal cancer by that point. And I thought, great, I lost my mother, I lost my husband, now I'm going to lose my father-in-law. Just all within 1 decade. And I just felt like I had this whole 10 years of grieving. And I just remember thinking, like, this isn't fair. So many other people in my life haven't lost a soul. I'm going to lose the 3 people who are the closest to me. Like, when's it going to stop? The list's going on. And I was feeling sorry for myself when I wrote myself that letter. And I just published it online because I thought maybe it would help someone else. But I think as a therapist, I had just seen what happens to people when they feel sorry for themselves and the results aren't good. So I just wanted to
Hmm.
say, all right, this is the hand I was dealt. What am I going to do about it? And there was always something I could do, whether it was about managing my feelings, doing something kind for somebody else. We talk a lot about self-care, but like sitting in a bathtub for every day wasn't really going to make my life better. But what could I do to help somebody else? And when we start helping other people, I think that's when we start to heal and start to feel better too.
Saying that and writing it down, like my wife and I were just having a conversation yesterday, and I was like, she was stressing about something that she didn't know was like 100% going to happen with medical school. I was like, hey, like you're stressing, and what if it doesn't occur? Like you're wasting all that time stressing. And it's like, and then I was like, okay, but that's super easy for me to say. Like, yeah, it's hard to turn off that stress switch. So how can you go from not feeling sorry for yourself to like, what are some actionable steps to kind of pull you out of that funk in that situation?
So it's important sometimes to just ask yourself, like, what can I do right now? Do I need to solve how I feel about the problem, or do I need to solve the problem in itself? And I think a lot of our suffering comes from picking the wrong path, right? If I have a stack of bills and I'm really behind on all my payments, I could watch Netflix today and binge watch some shows. That's going to make me feel better in the moment, but that stack of bills is still there tomorrow. And my
Mm-hmm.
problem's getting bigger because the stack's getting higher. But if I said, all right, I'm going to tackle the pile of bills just by opening one envelope at a time, figuring out how much I owe, then I'm at least going to start to feel better. It's more uncomfortable today, but I can feel better over time. But so often we pick the other path, or when somebody says, my teenager's doing drugs and I gotta stop them. And they put all of their energy and effort into searching their room and doing all of these things instead of saying like, well, what can you control? You can't control somebody else's behavior, but you can control yourself. Or when somebody says, what if my boss is mad at me tomorrow? You can't control how your boss responds, but you can control your behavior. So it's always about taking that step back and saying, well, what's within my control? And where am I going to put my energy? And then sometimes just letting ourselves say, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? Maybe you don't get into the program you wanted to get in. You don't get the promotion. You uh, come in last place in a race. Well, then what would happen? Usually the answer is, all right, I'd feel bad, but that's fine. And just
Mm,
letting yourself go there sometimes is okay, but I'd make it time limited. You have 10 minutes to worry. And there's research that will show if you set aside 10 minutes a day to worry about something and you schedule it, you're less likely to let it consume you 24/7. So the trick is then when you start worrying about it outside of that time, you say, no, I'm going to worry about that later.
mhm.
And you put it off. And within a couple of weeks of practicing that, your brain actually changes. And people will come into my therapy office who start doing this and they'll be like, I feel like the weight of the world has been lifted off my shoulders. I can pay attention to what I'm doing because I'm not always worried about
Mhm.
101 other things. So I think there's a lot of things we can do sometimes to make sure that we aren't wasting so much time worrying about things that are outside of our control.
in and tell me if this is totally not something that I should be doing. But in high school and then into college and even now, it's something I just started. I think my senior year is like you would have, big exams, big tests, big projects due, and that would in college and in high school and then even in work. And my coworkers and my peers, they'd always like get like really stressed and start to like freak out and do. But I never did. The only thing that I think is like, okay, this project is due on Friday. If I don't do it, it's still gonna be due on Friday, and nothing happens. Like there is an end date to it, and that end date is Friday. And so it always just put things into perspective for me. Like regardless of whether or not I do it, the stress for this will be over on Friday. So I can either choose to do it or I can not. And it's the same, like stress ends. So it's like, how do you want to approach this? And that would always put it in perspective. And I was always able to do the stuff I need to get done because I always knew my stress and my anxiety and my end date was always a set time.
I love that because so often we think of a problem and it just feels like it's all consuming and it's going to last forever. Most problems don't last forever, and most emotions aren't going to last very long either. But we think, oh, like I can't stand the anxiety. That's not going to last forever, or I can't stand to feel that way. I can't stand it if I fail because it'll be embarrassing. But all of those things are temporary. And I think keeping that into perspective of, all right, the exam's on Friday. Friday's gonna come whether I want it to or not. And I have two options of what I'm gonna do about it, prepare
Mm-hmm.
or don't. And the choice is mine. And recognizing choice in life is so important too. Just knowing, okay, so often we tell ourselves, I have to do something. Oh, I have to study and I don't have time and this is going to be horrible and awful. Well, you don't have to study. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't, you might not do so well. But if you do, perhaps you'll be more prepared and you'll feel more confident. You'll perform better. So just recognizing the choice we have too, I think empowers us and gets rid of a lot of that stress. When we think that we are trapped and there's nothing we can do about something, we tend to feel way worse, even if it's the exact same situation compared to when we remind ourselves, nope, I have options.
Amy, you have a TED Talk with over 24 million views. I went to the TEDx YouTube channel, and you're top 15 of like most views on their YouTube channel, which is amazing. Congratulations. You
Thank you.
have 6 best-selling books. The 7th is coming out. You know a ton about mentally strength. People are convinced they want to learn more. They say to themselves, "I want to be mentally strong." Where would they start? What would be the first trait they should start to develop?
So, I always say, let's start by giving up the things that are holding you back, right? I write
Mm,
about what mentally strong people don't do. And similar to like if you're going to get into physical fitness, like great, your trainer might tell you to run on the treadmill or go lift some weights. But if you didn't start by eliminating the things that were keeping you stuck, if you're eating 16 jelly donuts a day, well, then you could run on the treadmill as long as you want. And it's not going to work. And so
mm,
I think just really examining like, what are some of my bad mental habits? Do I have one? Um, do I feel sorry for myself? Do I beat myself up when I make a mistake? Do I view failure as the end point? Just examining some of those things in your life and being really honest with what are the things I'm doing that are holding me back. And then on the flip side, you can start incorporating some stuff into your day. For example, gratitude is one of the biggest superpowers that there is. And research will show if you were to just write down 3 things in a gratitude journal before you go to bed, you'll sleep better, your quality of sleep improves, you sleep longer, but you also improve your happiness by 25%. You might live longer grateful people tend to outlive the rest of us. You take better care of yourself. Your relationships get better. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It takes fewer than 10 minutes a day to just sit down and say, what am I grateful for today? And people who start doing that will start to notice a difference, and you start to transform your brain just one small step at a time. So if we were to focus on thinking, gratitude's a great one. When it comes to emotions, just naming an emotion is incredibly powerful. It increases your emotional intelligence and also takes a lot of the sting out of it. So when you're nervous about something, if you could say, oh, I feel really anxious right now, your anxiety goes down. The duration and the intensity of it decreases. We call it name it to tame it.
Mhm.
But so many of us are bad at naming our emotions, because how often do we talk about feelings? Not much, right? Like, people can usually say like, oh, I was mad the other day, or I'm kind of frustrated with this project. But when's the last time you told somebody, hey, I feel kind of sad today, or I feel a little anxious about this project I'm working on? We don't really talk about it. So people struggle. And in the therapy office, I'll ask people like, how'd you feel? And they'll say, well, I felt that person was an idiot. I'm like, no, that's a thought. That's not an emotion. And so sometimes we'll just start with like, print off a list of feeling words, you hang it on your bathroom mirror, and while you're brushing your teeth every day, just name your emotion. Like, how do I feel right now? And then you become much better adept at realizing too, how's my mood going to affect my behavior today? Research will show, let's say you're sad. Maybe you're sad about your grandmother's latest health issue, and you're sad. You go into work that day and your boss says, hey, I have this new project. Do you want to take it on? Chances are you're going to say no, even though your sadness or your anxiety has nothing to do with this project. We don't really compartmentalize our emotions. But if you went into work knowing this is how I'm feeling today, you'd be like, okay, I need to know I'm much less likely to take a new risk. So when I am faced with an opportunity, I'm going to spend a little more time thinking about it. And that's really the behavioral piece, is knowing like, what's one challenge I can do today? The more that we do challenge ourselves, the more that we start to learn. I can do things I didn't think I could do. And in my case, I was an incredibly shy kid, like never spoke in class, never raised my hand, like nothing. And I would never have spoken in front of like 5 people. Like even in high school, I had like 12 people in my English class that I'd grown up with. My teacher used to read my English papers for me because I was way too shy to read it. So the fact that I would grow up to become somebody who gave a TEDx talk to 25 million people, and I have a podcast and I get to do all this cool stuff, never would have dreamed it. But again, it's all about doing things just one small step at a time. And then you start to realize, oh, if I challenge what my brain tells me I can't do, and I do these things every day, after a while, my brain starts to realize I'm more capable, I'm more competent. And when you believe in yourself, there's so many things you can do. I know it sounds cliche, but the research is there that your belief in yourself is one of the biggest determining factors of how successful that you will be. But you don't just wake up one day and say, I'm amazing, and suddenly it changes. You have to take the action steps to say, okay, I'm going to do this really hard thing. And even if it doesn't work out, I'm going to learn from it. And the more that we keep doing that, the more mental strength that we build.
2 things. One, it reminds me of like Stephen Pressfield's like The War of Art. He talks about the resistance, and like the more you should do something, the more like you have your calling, the more the resistance, whatever you want to call that, will like try to rationally and talk you out and say you're not good enough and like not want to do that thing. And it sounds, and he always talks about like the more you push and the more you do that thing anyway, the more your life opens up and you find that purpose, and you actually give to the world what you're capable of giving to the world. That's something I've really been focusing on this year. That's like my main focus, because like with the podcast, I'm a very introverted extrovert. I can turn it on. I like talking to people. I love learning from people. I love learning from people who know so much more from me. And then I have to like retreat back and like recharge and feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, I've got the next one, and I got to like turn it back on again. And for me, it's like really hard to be like, well, who am I? Like, what questions do I have? How can I do this? Versus, and it just like pushes me away. But after every single podcast, I feel so much better. Then I feel better than when I do a really good workout. I feel better than when I like accomplish like a big race. It feels so much more rewarding to me, because I think it's like my biggest resistance.
And that's the thing, because sometimes people will say like, well, I could give a talk in front of 100 people, so therefore I'm already mentally strong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's not the thing that's holding you back in life. Maybe you can't push yourself to work out every day. We all have something different, and it's not always rational, right? I could get
Mm-hmm.
up on a stage in front of 10,000 people. It's really not a big deal. But like, if I go to the social hour afterward where everybody's just kind of mingling and talking, that's much more difficult for me to do. Other
Mhm.
people will say the opposite. Oh, no, I can work a room, no problem. So just recognizing, like, what are the challenges I have? We all have them. And again, they're not always rational. I've worked with people who are like top government employees appointed by the president. They're doing all these incredibly powerful things. And I gave a talk once, and then this man came up afterward and he said, I'm having trouble setting some boundaries with my mother in law who watches our kids during the day.
Mhm.
And you think, this doesn't make a lot of sense. You could make all of these incredible decisions on one hand, but we all have these sticking points in life, and just recognizing it's so tempting to just avoid it, right? I want to keep
Mhm.
doing what I excel at, the things that are easy. But personal growth comes from pushing ourselves to do the hard things and to really acknowledge those sticking points.
With the journaling, with the gratitude, science behind it, all in, like, I definitely feel it when I feel more gratitude, but what is the best application? Like 3 times before bed or in the morning, 3 different things each time? Like, when can I repeat? And this is me, my personality trait where it's like, what are the rules? How can I do it?
So the best way to practice gratitude is whatever way that you will stick to it.
Mm,
And for some people, it's, if I leave a notebook on my pillow at night and I know that then instead of scrolling, I'm going to write down those 3 things, that works. I worked with another woman who said on the car ride to school, I ask my kids what they're grateful for and I share it. I've worked with other people who say at the dinner table, I just sit and think of the 3 things. Somebody else says while I brush my teeth. So it's really about how you're going to practice it. But when it comes to gratitude, so often we kind of run out of things and it starts to feel like a chore. And this is, I think, what you were alluding to, where people are like,
mhm,
man, grateful I had clean water and the sun was shining. And you don't really like feel a ton of
mhm,
gratitude for those things. So I think you can get specific about like what today. And it gets even better when we think about people in our lives. So if somebody gifted you a pair of socks instead of thinking, well, I'm grateful that my friend gave me a pair of socks, just imagine your friend like shopping for your socks, picking them out, that they like took time out of their day to do something for you. And it might be something simple. Maybe they came over and helped you with something, or you had this amazing phone call with them. But just thinking about the people in your life that you're grateful for. And if you want to take it a step further, you actually thank them. Whether
mhm.
you just send a quick text message that's not, hey, thanks for coming over today, but it's all, thanks for being you. Thanks for the person that you are, not just the act that you did. And then not only do we get an extra boost because we are thinking about that and we shared it, but then they get an extra boost of happiness and gratitude and all of these feel good feelings too. Your relationship gets better. So for some people, that's a better goal, is to say, at least once a day, I'm going to send a card, a text message, an email to somebody that says like why I appreciate them as a human being. And then you can repeat people. Maybe your best friend gets on the list at least once a month and your parents make the list every other week. Who knows? But just making sure that you have some kind of a gratitude practice and paying attention, like what really works for you. Because I know some people would say, oh, if I do it before bed, it just feels like one more thing on my to-do list.
Mhm.
But if during the day I make it a habit to say I'm going to reach out to one person, I love it. It fuels me.
I think that's a really good perspective to think of not just the object, but the time and the effort that they put into to get you that object. I've never really thought about it that way, but just like off the top of my head when you said that, I like ran a couple things from the past couple days in my mind, and I just like immediately felt like a lot more gratitude for it because, like you said, somebody hands you a pair of socks, but somebody went to the store, they spent the time, they found something that you liked, and that's so much more meaningful than the pair of socks.
Right. And when we really think about that, like that's incredible that somebody, they were
Yeah.
thinking about you, they took the time to do something kind for you, and that they, whether they spent money or they just devoted their a helping hand or an ear when you needed it, like that's awesome that somebody cares that much about you in life.
Well, as you said earlier, the 13 things mentally strong people don't do, you originally wrote about 10 years ago. Is there anything that you would add to it now that you wish you had added then?
Oh, good question. There's never been like one thing where I think, oh,
Mhm,
I should have put that in there. But obviously the world has kind of changed, right?
mhm,
Since 2013, social media has become such a big thing, and the pandemic. And so I think that all of the things, the principles, I still stand by all of them, but certainly they've shifted. A lot of the struggles that we have now have intensified in some places and become bigger problems than ever. I didn't know that like Instagram and TikTok were going to blow up in the in the years since I wrote the book. And I think for a lot of people, certain things on that list have become even more difficult. So, for example, one of them is about uh, not expecting immediate results. That
Mhm.
has definitely gotten harder over the last decade. I mean, you order something online, it can be on your doorstep in an hour. So people are like, okay, I've been working on my personal growth for like 2 weeks now. I'm really not feeling better. What's going on here? And we're tempted to give up, I think, faster, and we expect things to happen faster. And we also hear a lot of success stories that aren't accurate, and it kind of skews our view of how to get there. So when we hear about somebody becoming an overnight success, we think, well, that didn't happen to me. And people will say that to me all the time too, like, wow, you wrote this one article that went viral and it changed your whole life. And that's true, but like I had written thousands and thousands of articles that did not go viral, and it wasn't as easy as I wrote one article and my life changed. It's been work for the past decade to make it happen, but people don't see all of that. And I think with social media, it's really easy to just see the end result, or we just see somebody's highlight reel,
Mhm.
and it causes us to compare ourselves even more than ever.
I love the quote or the saying where it's like, "Yeah, I was an overnight success. It just took me 10 years."
Right,
And
exactly.
because exactly, you're working in the shadows, you're developing the skills, you're developing, whatever it needs, and then eventually that tipping point, that part where you get the rewards. What is it? It's we're entitled to our labor, not the fruits of our labor. So meaning like
Yeah.
we're entitled to what we do, the art. So and for me, like the podcast or whatever, but I can't control the downloads. I can't control the success. I can't control the fruits of that labor, but I am entitled to the fulfillment and the enjoyment I get from creating it, regardless of who's listens or doesn't listen.
And I hear that from so many people who they're like, well, I put in all the hard work, so I deserve success. Or how come it's not happening to me? Well, if we took podcasts as an example, I don't know, 98% of podcasts don't even make it past like the fifth or the 10th
Mm-hmm.
episode because it's so much work. So many people end up quitting. It's really difficult to find an audience and to figure out what kind of show. And week after week, it's a lot of work. Doesn't mean you're going to be the next Joe Rogan, right? But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people say, this isn't fair. I put in all this work. Or people who get a college degree and they say, I just studied for 4 years. I deserve a really good job. And like, no, it really doesn't work like that. There's nobody that's going to say, you put in X amount of work, so therefore you deserve X amount of money or X amount of fame or uh, so many Instagram followers just because you put in the effort.
Funny enough, in my end of year result, I wrote. So you brought up I've got your list of things right here. They expect things. They don't expect immediate results. That's one of the things I wrote. Is like oftentimes I expect things to come faster than they should, and it results in like a, a feeling of failure, and oftentimes like a desire to stop or quit or feel like it's not worth it. And that was something I wrote in like big bold letters. Is like you're doing it for the enjoyment of it, not for the results. And if I do it that way, there is no immediate results. There is no expectation. I just enjoy what I'm doing, and I'm doing it because it makes me feel good. And that's really something I want to focus on and kind of want to develop, because it's been invaluable. Like I feel so much better each day. There's no gain or loss. It's just for the fun, for the art.
And that's difficult for those of us who are kind of achievement driven, right? You
Mm-hmm.
want to get to the next milestone, you want a goal, you want to have things that you can check off. We want to measure all this stuff. And it takes that extra effort to be like, I'm just going to enjoy the journey, or let me look around right now and just appreciate where I am without feeling like I have to get to that next milestone. And even when we are in that mindset, like we think, oh, I'll be so much happier when I get to X, when I get that promotion, when I finish that race, when I'm number one at the company, research will show over and over again we're really bad at predicting what causes creates happiness for us, and when we do reach that milestone it's incredibly short-lived, and then everything resets again and you just kind of get used to that level of success or achievement. And so I think that's a huge goal, and it's a daily thing to remind myself of too, of like, no, you just enjoy where you are right now. Like, I'm
Yeah.
really lucky, fortunate to be where I am. There's so many things I can enjoy on an absolute daily basis. When I'm 80 years old and I look back again, what am I going to think? Gee, I wished I would have, spent 17 more hours a day hustling. Like, no, probably not. Like, instead, like, I hope I really enjoyed this phase of my life.
I have a background in like strength, I've always been very fast, very explosive, been a sprinter, had, really good lifts. And something like after I experienced that burnout and stopped doing it, my mindset shifted and I shifted to sports that I was really bad at, the long endurance ones. So like long runs, like I've done Ironmans, I've done 50-mile races, I've got a 100-mile race this year, I've got like a bunch of stuff. And what's been really relieving is like, I'm bad at that. Like, I don't expect to be a world champion Ironman versus like if I started doing like Olympic weightlifting again, I'm really good at that. And so I have like expectations for myself. And that's been extremely freeing. And that's been what's kind of helped me develop my mindset over the past year is like, I'm doing something, I'm not good at it, and that's okay.
I love that. And to talk about pushing yourself, right? To be like, I'm going to
Yeah.
explore this new thing. You're constantly learning, not just about the skills that are in front of you, but also like your brain's figuring more about who am I? If I
Mhm.
always do the same things every day, I don't really learn a lot about myself. If I only do the things I know I'm going to excel at, or that I can figure out really quickly, I don't learn a lot about myself. But when I say I'm going to do something brand new, I learned so much more about myself. I currently live on a sailboat. I really don't know that much about sailing. I didn't when I moved here, but I was like, I can learn how to sail. And it's been one of those things too. Like, I'm not good at sailing. I'm not like a physics person who can say, the wind is going this direction at this time, but it's kind of cool to figure it out. And I've learned so many other things. And the things that I learned from this, I can apply to so many other things in my life in so many different ways. And I think it's all about that, taking action, right? If you just said,
Mhm.
oh, I could do this or I could do that, but it's not the steps that you take. And when you put one small step in front of the other and you start to be like, okay, this is kind of cool. And it's okay to not be the best at something, incredible growth can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been past 2 years have been probably like if I look back, they've been the most fulfilling. Like I have achieved the least in terms of like what I'm used to achieving in terms of like physical attributes and like milestones and that, but they've definitely been the most fulfilling and I feel happier, which is really again a unique shift because success and achievement oriented people, chasing that next goal. And it's really interesting to be able to step back and be like, all right, maybe I wasn't doing life right. Maybe something
Right.
maybe something should be a little bit different. And I hope I can continue to develop that. But once you see something change and for the better, especially something that you've been doing so long, it's really exciting for like, okay, what else am I doing that I probably could be doing better or that could make me happier?
Absolutely. And I'll say, one of the things I do in life is I try to monetize like just about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's fun and it's like ridiculous. Like, hey, I got paid to work out, right? And like what other weird things can I do and how could I monetize it? And then, at some point I realized too, like, all right, it's great that you can have all these strange side hustles and you can earn money doing interesting things. But on the other hand, like, how do you just have a hobby that you do that just to do? And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter if you're monetizing it or it doesn't matter if you make money on it. And like, just enjoy something for the sake of it. You don't have to sell it. You don't have to do anything other than just be in the moment. And for me, that's something I have to practice on a regular basis.
Oh, absolutely. I've been in that same boat, and I was actually talking to somebody about that the other day. I'm a big nerd. I like hanging out with my friends. We like to play board games. We like to get together. It's super social. I was over at a friend's last night. We were playing board games, and I was literally thinking about that last month. I was like, okay, let's start a YouTube channel. Let's get like an
Uh-huh.
overhead camera. Let's get like mic'd up. Everybody, it'll be super fun, super engaging. And I'm like, well, then I just added so much extra work to something that I do for fun. I was like, that's
Right.
the last thing I want to do. I was like, I want to enjoy it for the fact that I enjoy it.
Yes, and I think, giving ourselves permission to just enjoy something and not feel guilty about it. It doesn't have to be productive all the time. It's okay to rest. It's okay to do something silly. Things don't always have to have a purpose. It's just about how do you spend your time and how do you enjoy the moment during the day.
With the rise of social media, big thing, obviously from 2013 to now, but we also have kind of in a similar but also faster the rise of AI is coming pretty heavily. How do you think that'll impact both therapy and mental strength?
Oh, good question. So, what I'm seeing already is a lot of people who are outsourcing their problems, their questions, their lives to AI already. And they're just
Mhm.
like, I don't really know what to do, or how do I have this conversation with this person? And they'll run it through ChatGPT. Like, here's my scenario. Well, I also know that I can make ChatGPT say just about anything I want it to say. And if I reword it in another way, it will give me different advice. So I can make it give me the advice that I want to hear. And I think it's a wonderful, I think AI is a wonderful tool and a resource for people, but I do have concerns that it's going to impair our critical thinking skills, our problem solving skills, that people are blindly following it. If you have a issue with a family member and you're asking AI, like, how do I deal with this person? Like, you know the person, you
Mhm.
know how to approach them. ChatGPT is going to give you a very generic answer of what works in certain cases, but it doesn't have the nuance. And so I don't think it's going to be a substitute for therapy. I know a lot of people are really worried. A lot of therapists are concerned it's going to take over their jobs, but there's so many things about the human connection. And so I think it's a great tool. It's a great resource to use for certain things, but we have to be really mindful of how we use it. I'm already seeing so many people who are just trying to outsource all their choices in life to AI, and I don't think that's where we want to go with it.
Mhm. Two things. I've been running a filter through my AI because I use it sometimes for podcasts. Like, hey, how's this thumbnail? How's this,
Right.
title, whatever you want to use. And what I notice is like it always gives me positive feedback. That's great. That's great. And then I started doing is like, hey, this is my friend's thumbnail. And so like I try to take myself out of it, and I say the exact same thing, but I started with like my friends. Like my friends, this is my friend's thumbnail. I'm not sure how I feel about it. Like, and then I put it in, and it gives me totally different answer than if I say this is my thumbnail. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm seeing exactly that where people are like, "Okay, I think I'm gonna end this relationship with my friend because my friend is toxic." And ChatGPT is like, "Yes, absolutely. Do not let this person in your life." Whereas if you said, "Hey, I have this disagreement with my friend, thinking about having this conversation," ChatGPT is like, "Yes, you need to have this conversation because that could improve your relationship." And it's all about the perspective, right? So a lot of people come into my therapy office and they talk about everything through their lens. So one of the exercises we'll do is like, well, if I were to ask your husband how that conversation went last night, like what would his story be about it? Or
Mm.
if I were to talk to your sibling about why you guys have a strained relationship, what story would they tell me? And we can get into some of those nuances. You can flip somebody's perspective, help them see that there's other ways to look at the exact same situation. But if you don't have that insight, you're only telling ChatGPT your side of the story. You're only using AI to kind of reinforce your beliefs. Um, and that's frightening to me, but also the idea that people are like, I don't know how to talk to my husband about the fact that he leaves his socks in the middle of the floor, so I'm going to use ChatGPT to do it. Or sending emails, and you're like, we really need to continue working on making our own thoughts and making our own decisions. And already you can see when people depend on it too much to send their emails or to,
Yeah.
post on social media that you know that they didn't write it.
Yeah. Yeah. I never use it for any of that kind of stuff because it is so obvious, and like you want it to be authentic, and like, yes, I'll make grammatical mistakes. Yes, I'll make, spelling mistakes. Yes, I'll say it not in the most efficient and loquacious and elegant way. That's fine. Like
Right.
if somebody sends me that, I know it's them. I want to be more engaged versus they put in a prompt and they're just copying and pasting it somewhere else. So I totally get that.
And the other scary thing about it too is the mental health information that is predominantly online is bad. Like if they looked at TikTok, 80% of the mental health information on TikTok is misinformation, and a lot of it is downright harmful. And there's a lot of incredibly huge influencers these days who have no mental health expertise or background,
Hmm.
and they're offering advice as if it is 100% true all the time. And it goes viral because it sounds catchy, and then all of these AIs are picking it up and repeating it and giving it out as advice. Some of it is just really bad advice. And so I'm concerned about people who are diagnosing themselves with ADHD, or they are convinced that they need to make this certain change in their life because that's what AI told them, when it's not even good advice to begin with.
Is there any like off the top of your head that you've been seeing repeated more often and that's bad advice and you'd be like, hey, maybe not?
I see. So some of the things I see often are like, somebody will say, "You don't have social anxiety. It's just that you're surrounded by bad people." Like that's not true at all. Like social anxiety is a disorder that takes place across like work and home and family and friends, and by definition. Or I see a lot of other people that talk about like high functioning anxiety. Like there's no such thing as high functioning anxiety or high functioning depression. Like, that's not actual diagnosis. Or when it comes to ADHD, a lot of people talk about how we all have it, or how if you can't pay attention for more than 2 minutes, certain tests like that. None of that's true either. But there's a lot of really bad advice out there about therapy in general. There's a lot of misinformation about who needs therapy, or we should all get therapy all the time. Like, no, I don't believe that's true either. So a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Uh, I was reading about a recent lawsuit against, I believe it's Chat GPT. This kid ended up committing suicide. He hung himself, and one of the last things he said to his Chat GPT, because they were talking back and forth about it, he was like, "Hey, I really feel like I should leave the noose out." And so, like, it could be found, and so he could be talked off of it. But the Chat GPT was like, "No, keep this between us." And it ended up in obviously a terrible, terrible thing. And it's really sad and unfortunate how AI is going. And obviously, I don't think there's any way to stop AI. Like, it's not gonna stop. It's gonna keep going. It's just the hope that people can be more educated in how they use it and what it should actually be applied for.
I think that's it as well, is to make sure that if you are using it, that you're not using it as a 100% gold standard, and that we are educating other people too, especially kids, that it's not advice we should be following.
Well, Amy, with people listening to this, where should they start with your books? You've got 6. The original, obviously, is the 13 things mentally strong people don't do. Is that where they should start?
I think that is probably the best
Yeah.
place to start. And then for people that want to take it to the next level, I have the 13 things mentally strong people don't do workbook. So if you want to, okay, now I read the book, I learned the things. Now I really want to figure out how to apply them to my life. The workbook is the next second best place to go.
Okay, that's awesome. And the podcast, which I was listening to, I've been listening to it actually for a while. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
You have your interview based ones, and then you also have your solo ones, which are great. Also, well done on the podcast. I don't know if you're reading from a script. I don't know what's going on, but it feels very smooth, and it feels wonderful. And I'm like, goals. I want to be like that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that so much.
Well, I have a tradition where I end the podcast with my guests. I ask them who would be the person that they think I, in my position, after getting to talk to me for like an hour, should talk to. Who would be the person that I'd be most interested and benefit from speaking with?
Oh, let me think about this one for a minute.
Yeah, take your time.
Well, you know who I had on my show and I absolutely loved, and he's not a mental health professional, but he wrote the book Tough, Terry Crews.
Terry Crews.
He Yeah, and so you have this guy who's this well-known figure from TV and from his football and all of this stuff, and he talks about the difficult childhood he had, all of the mistakes that he's made in life, how he stepped forward and said, "Hey, even though I'm like on TV and so many people like me, I have some dark things hidden in my closet," and
Mm,
how he worked through all of that. And I think he really helps a lot of people understand about what it means to be tough as well.
yeah.
And I really like the way that he frames it.
Absolutely. I think his work on like porn addiction has been like super awesome. He talks about that a lot, and about the detriment to relationships and to him as a man. It's really cool. I would love to talk to him.
He is incredible. In fact, we won the Webby Award for the best podcast episode in health and fitness a few years back when he was my guest, and it wasn't me talking; it was him, because
Yeah.
he's just incredible with the way he's so vulnerable about his story, but talks also about how he's healing and how he's still working on himself.
Well, I haven't listened to that one. I'm gonna listen to that one today because that sounds awesome. Um, where can people find you? Where can they follow? Where can they get more of
So
Amy?
my website is Amy Morin, LCSW.com, as in licensed clinical social worker, and my podcast is called Mentally Stronger with therapist Amy Morin.
Well, Amy, thank you again so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
It was a pleasure.